As you can imagine, flipping 31 houses at once was a bit of a challenge. Thank God I had been a logistics officer in the Marine Corps for 10 years and knew how to manage logistics under pressure, because that was pretty much my life for 4 months to get this deal done. Stay tuned for the whole story. Welcome to the Mastering Real Estate podcast. This podcast is for real estate investors and professionals looking to take their real estate game to the next level. Each week, I review the industry's leading real estate books and break down the main lessons that you can apply to your life and business. Then, every other week, I review my own personal lessons learned from flipping over 100 houses and being a full-time real estate investor since 2018. Stay tuned each week so that we can all become masters of real estate together. Welcome back to the Mastering Real Estate podcast. This is episode 20. In episode 18, I began the story of purchasing a 42 property portfolio in Birmingham, Alabama. However, figuring out how to buy this monster was just the beginning. Now I had to figure out how to flip all these houses, pay back my investors, and hopefully keep a few houses for our own portfolio. Signing the purchase papers at the closing felt like a big milestone, but it was just the start of an all-out sprint for the next 4 months to follow through on all my promises and really make this deal work. Before we get into it, I'm your host, Maura. I've been a full-time real estate investor since 2018. I've managed over 100 flips, founded and grown a real estate investment firm, and I live and work in the real estate industry every day. If you follow this podcast, you know the drill. We have 2 main show formats. We do real estate book reviews, and I share my own lessons learned from the real estate trenches. If there's a certain book you want me to review, just send me a message and I'll add it to the list. As for today, let's dive into some big lessons learned from one of my most complex real estate deals. Also, don't forget, we have a cool YouTube channel where you can watch the video versions of this podcast. On YouTube, you can see the before and after photos and videos that go along with each story and really see what I'm talking about. Just search for the Mastering Real Estate podcast or Duratus Properties and you'll find us on YouTube. Subscribe so that you never miss an episode or any of our other content. Okay, so in episode 18, I talked about everything required to get to the closing table to purchase this 42 property portfolio. Well, we signed the papers, clinked our champagne glasses, and had a nice little celebration. Then I woke up the next morning and realized that we had just arrived at the starting line and we had a whole race to run before we could declare victory over this deal. Here's a quick review of what we bought and what we had to do. We purchased 43 single-family houses scattered throughout Birmingham, Alabama, and they were mostly all tenant-occupied rentals. The average year built for all the properties was 1966. The average square feet of all the properties was 1,600. The average mix of all the houses was 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms. The year was August of 2019, and our timeline, it took us 2 months from signing the LOI to close, and then it would take us an additional 4 months from purchasing all these houses to flip and sell all of them. We ended up purchasing the entire portfolio for $2.25 million. We had an 80% loan-to-cost loan from Bryant Bank. Thank you, Bryant Bank. And that made us have a down payment of $630,000. We afforded this by doing 2 1031 exchanges valued at $130,000, and then we had to raise $500,000 from private investors to fund the deal. That we followed to make this whole deal work was that we quickly flipped and sold 31 out of the 43 properties to other investors for $1.6 million. This allowed us to pay back our investors and pay back the bank. Then we had 11 properties left over, valued at approximately $500,000 that we could keep, flip, or divide among ourselves. So we set to work flipping 31 houses and coordinating the sales of all the houses. Flipping 31 houses at once was challenging in many ways, as you can imagine. Some of the main challenges were, number one, finding and managing good contractors. Basically, we had 3 contractor crews working around the clock to fix all the minor issues with these houses and prepare them for sale. For the most part, they were fixing all the items that came up on the home inspections and doing relatively minor jobs like paint, plumbing, siding, and roof repairs. However, as some of you know, organization is not usually a contractor's strong suit. So keeping all these guys organized, on task, outfitted with the necessary supplies, and properly documenting all the repairs was a full-time job. There was the challenge of coordinating logistics between the tenants living in the properties and the contractors. These houses were almost all tenant occupied, so we couldn't just go in and conduct repairs whenever we wanted. We had to coordinate all the repairs around each tenant's schedule and carefully schedule everyone, only to have last-minute issues come up pretty much every day. Thank God I was a logistics officer for 10 years in the Marine Corps and was very comfortable managing logistics under pressure, because that was pretty much my entire life for about 4 months doing all these flips. When I wasn't coordinating the logistics of managing schedules, materials, and payments relating to flipping 31 houses, I was lining up 31 sales. Luckily, I was able to work with RP Capital, which is a great turnkey rental company that we worked with a lot in the early days, to get roughly half of the 31 houses under contract before we even closed on the purchase of this portfolio. This was crucial in proving to the bank that we could follow through on our strategy and pay everyone back. So once we closed, my first priority was to get the first 15 houses that we had under contract flipped and ready to close again. Then I had to work with RP Capital along with some other buyers to get the remaining 16 houses under contract for sale. Now, if you've ever bought or sold a house, you might know that every sale involves a lot of back and forth between the buyer and the seller, their agents, inspectors, and the lenders on both sides of the transaction. A few buyers bought more than one house, but my phone was flooded with calls and emails nonstop for 4 months so that I could keep everyone informed and get to the final closing tables. It was an adrenaline-fueled 4 months, fueled by a burning need to deliver on all my promises and get everyone paid back. And, of course, prove that Duratus was a force to be reckoned with. It was an emotional roller coaster, but by the end of January 2020, we had flipped and sold 31 houses and were left with 11 houses to keep between the 3 partners, which was pretty cool. They were valued at approximately $500,000 and cash flowed about $5,500 per month. I don't think that I clearly explained this at the beginning, but the 3 partners were myself, Aziz Shinara, and Danny Gonzalez. And we actually formed a separate LLC with a whole separate partnership agreement and operating agreement specifically for this portfolio deal, which was a very good idea because we didn't necessarily all want to be partners forever. As many of you know from past episodes, Aziz Shinara and I own and operate Duratus Properties and Duratus Academy, and Danny Gonzalez operates Freedom Ventures Property Management Company. In the end, once everything was paid off, we divided the 11 houses among ourselves to add to each of our own rental portfolios. And I just want to say that it is completely okay to just be partners for a specific deal and then go in different directions. In fact, it's probably the best way to operate until you're absolutely certain that you want to work with someone and be partners with them for the long term. Anyways, at the end of this portfolio adventure, this was just the beginning of an entirely new chapter. Because, as we discovered, once you have all these houses, you need to be able to properly manage them in order to safeguard your investment. After working with the property managers, we were not 100% satisfied, so we decided to start our own property management company. Thus, Freedom Ventures Property Management was born. But the full story behind starting and running a property management company will come in a future podcast episode. Okay, in summary, my key takeaways from this crazy portfolio deal are, number 1, you can partner on a deal without having a long-term partnership. In fact, it's probably advisable to do this before entering into a long-term partnership. That way you have a chance to see how you work with someone else, make sure that you're on the same page, and maybe once you've done a successful deal or two, then it would be a good time to consider entering into a long-term business partnership with someone. Number 2, if you want to flip houses full-time, you need to be decent at logistics and project management. I've never been more grateful for my experience as a logistics officer than I was during this crazy time. Something is always going wrong in construction and when you're flipping houses, and especially if you have an insane number of flips, 31 flips going at one time, you need to be able to calmly manage logistics under pressure all the time. So I was very grateful to have learned this skill set in the Marine Corps, and I think it's a really important skill set if you want to succeed as a flipper. Number 3, and there's always a solution. As you can probably tell, the 4 months that it took to flip and sell 31 houses were a crazy emotional roller coaster. Some days, everything went wrong. The contractor schedule would get messed up, a house would fall out of escrow, a major unforeseen repair would come up, you name it. It happened. Then there were some days that we would get lucky breaks. The one day that we met a buyer who decided to buy 7 properties. Through the highs and the lows, you can never give up. There's always a solution to every problem. Sometimes it's just a little harder to find. To succeed, you must endure and never give up. And this is not just an important takeaway from this deal, but from business in general. I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Duratus Academy, which makes this show possible. We have a bunch of free investor resources, including all of our podcast show notes, an awesome masterclass about how to get started in real estate investing the right way, all available on our website, duratusacademy.com. One very cool free tool that I recommend you check out is our property analysis tool. This is the actual deal analysis spreadsheet that we have honed over time, and my team and I actually use this every day to analyze all the deals that come into our business, and you can download it for free on our website at duratusacademy.com. So make sure you check that out and check out our masterclass. Next week, we're diving into Amanda Hahn and Matthew McFarland's book on advanced tax strategies for real estate investors. As you may remember, we covered their first book, which reviews tax for real estate investors, in episode 17. So I thought we might as well try to get a little more advanced when it comes to taxes next week and dive into their second book. Again, thank you so much for listening. I so appreciate you. If you like our show, make sure that you give us a follow wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. We are a new and growing podcast, so every rating, review, and share helps immensely. Also, make sure that you're following us on YouTube and social media. You'll get a lot more behind the scenes and content there daily. See you in the next one.